Ripple me this, riddle me that. Let's go Q4. You're up to bat. Hey folks, Sam I Am here. And I want to tell you some key things that I think are on the way. Some of my sort of things that I'm anticipating happening in Q4 that I want you to consider as well. One of which is the crash in October. People are just losing their shit on Twitter over me even suggesting that XRP might go down. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. You know, you want to flip out over it and whatever. People don't seem to get as upset when I think that it's going to go up, but suggest that it might go down and they just can't fathom it. So I'm going to explain kind of some of the reasoning behind that, as well as show you a few key pieces related to November and the end of November, and why I think the 589 prediction from the BGs, what I think will be the range of 6 to 1200, actually has a chance of happening. And if these pieces don't fall into place, I don't think it will happen at all. So let's jump right in. So first thing, what I've kind of envisioned happening, because of what the BGs have told us, that the retail customers, the masses, are going to be brought into the market in November. The institutions are going to be buying in October. They have an absolutely huge incentive to do whatever they can to drive the price down of XRP, of BTC, of all of these cryptocurrencies, because they're going to be buying them all to stock their exchanges and to stock the products that they're going to then turn around and sell to the customers. So they have an absolutely huge incentive to do what they can to drive prices down, turn people away from the markets, buy up the weak hands that are selling, and then turn around and reverse course and start driving it up. And of course, as these trillions of dollars are flooding into the market, there's only one way it's going to go, and that's up. I mean, it's just clear as day. You can't bring $1 trillion into a market and not, without expanding the base assets that people are buying, and not see prices rise. It's just basic supply and demand. So my thought is that they have this huge incentive to do what they can between now and October to kind of crash prices down even further. Yes, I know it's already down 90%. That does not mean that it couldn't go down another 30 to 40% in the case of XRP, or some other percentage in the case of BTC. And people also, their objection is, well, Ripple would never do that, yada, yada, yada. Well, for XRapid to succeed, number one, you need to understand that Ripple has to have liquidity in the marketplace. And who's going to provide that liquidity? Well, these same financial institutions that are in there stocking up for their exchanges. It's a catch-22. Ripple has to sell to them. The institutions know that. The institutions also know the timing of when they're going to go live with their crypto exchanges and crypto products and so forth. So they know how to time the market. They know when the opportune time to buy is, and when the opportune time to drive prices down and then turn reverse course and bring them back up. I think there's a very good chance of that happening. I say very good. I'm probably somewhere between 50 and 70% that we will see some kind of market decline in October. You know, nothing's guaranteed. Nobody can predict prices. I'm telling you, though, that there is a huge incentive for all of these institutional players to move in and do exactly that. And I think we might have seen some of the sort of first shots in the war here. So this is from Satis Group. They released this report on crypto, and you can see right here they're calling for an upside potential of 100K on BTC, 18K in XMR, and this is a 5-year projection. I actually agree. XMR is my number 2 investment. Bitcoin was supposed to be this private, untraceable currency. It turned out to not be that at all. But if you know, in the early days, Silk Road was really what put Bitcoin on the map. You could go out there, could buy any kind of drugs, have them mailed to your house. It's fantastic. You actually have feedback on the dealers, feedback on the products that you were getting and so forth. But it turned out to be not that private. And the state and so forth were able to start tracking people down through their interactions with the traditional finance system. XMR, not like that at all. It is the only crypto out there that is completely private. You can't see transactions being sent. You don't know how much is in wallets. There's really zero visibility there, but it's a secure, usable tool. They typically talk, they actually discuss how do we stay off of these exchanges because of the AML requirements and so forth. I think down the road, XRP will be the #1 crypto because of its wide adoption and utility, and XMR will one day be #2 because it will be the coin that serves the privacy and black market. Okay. But then if you go down here, they're saying XRP to 1 cent, which is absolutely crazy. They're repeating this FUD that has just been totally debunked about it's centralized and the validators are centralized, which they're not anymore. They haven't been for months. But yet here they are spreading FUD saying it's going to go down to a penny. I mean, how stupid do you have to be, or, you know, how paid off do you have to be to put something like this in your report? And of course, this made news all over, you know, people, Bitcoin to 96K, XRP to a penny. So there's #1. Now, a day or so ago, the IMF retweeted a story that's almost 6 months old. And if you look at that, it talks about, oh, Bitcoin's bad. It's used by money launderers and terrorists, and it's drug dealers and traffickers and this and that, and you shouldn't use it. Don't buy. Just more FUD. Okay. And, you know, I jumped in here. There's an interesting discussion with this guy, Barry, and there's some other people pointing out that, yeah, they're just trying to drive prices down. This guy agrees. So there's shot #2. And again, this is not going to have an immediate impact, but they're sort of softening up the market by putting this FUD out there, getting it in people's minds, thinking about this and reminding them, don't buy cryptos. They're not safe. You should stay out of them until we've had a chance to buy in, and then we'll come back and sell them to you at a much higher price. Now, the next big piece right here, nearly $1 billion in BTC from a Silk Road related wallet, which was the original site that bought and sold a lot of drugs with Bitcoin in the early days. All of a sudden, after sitting idle for nearly 4.5 years, this thing has just started laundering coins through exchanges and so forth, and they're starting to sell in blocks of 100. Now, this is going to take a lot of the buy-side pressure out and really soften up the market for a decline. So if down the road they start dumping significant portions, and I've said this, it's not necessarily going to be an attack on XRP. They have incentive to drive everything down. XRP is what they're going to primarily buy and stock their exchanges with. But if they drive down BTC, it's going to bring everything down with it. So mission accomplished, right? I don't know who owns this. It may not be related, but it's awful coincidental that right before we have mass adoption, I mean, it's literally at our door coming in 2 to 3 months, that all of a sudden $1 billion in Bitcoin that's been sitting idle for 4.5 years starts getting moved around. Okay, so that's kind of what I see as possible. Again, if it does crash, it's going to turn right back around because of what's coming. And I think that XRapid may be a tool that Ripple is sort of keeping in their back pocket, waiting for this to happen so that they can roll that out and sort of counter some of the effects and drive the price back up. Because of that utility, it's certainly going to do that for XRP. And so that's something I'm really watching. I'm going to keep looking for stories like this. And the reason is because, you know, I've met my targets, and then with the last drop, I actually have almost doubled them. So I'm set. I'm past where I wanted to be or where I thought I'd ever get to be. But I'm kind of stockpiling some cash right now rather than continuing to dollar cost average. I'm kind of stockpiling some cash because I'm leaning more towards this being a possibility. And if it does, then I'm going to buy. And if it goes to 20 cents, that's 5 for $1 versus the current a little under 3 right now. And if it goes less than that, to 10 cents or something, that'd be incredible. I mean, you could seriously buy a large amount. But if you're not in my position, if you haven't, met your targets and so forth, 33 cents, 35 cents is a phenomenal price. Keep buying. I'm not giving you investment advice here. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. You make your own decisions. I'm just giving you some things to think about and to consider. If you haven't met your target, keep buying. If you're like me and you're just kind of waiting to buy in with the whales, with the institutional providers, knowing what they're going to potentially do here, you might want to stockpile some cash between now and October. And of course, we might miss out. It might be 60, 80 cents. It might be over $1. And the money that I've got will buy a fraction of what it could today. I'm willing to take that risk because I've met my targets. If you're not in the same boat, make your own decisions, guys. Okay, let's talk about Swift. Now, they released this. Let me back up. I have made sort of I've proposed that they're going to integrate with Ripple. And I think integration is the wrong word. Ripple's come out and said we're not going to partner with Swift at all. They're this Model T with a Ferrari body on top. And I think that's really, I've been using the wrong word. I think what they're going to be is a customer of RippleNet. And that Swift will really be a dumb terminal in the same way your TV and your remote are a dumb terminal to the TV world, to all the content. The content's not originating from your TV. It's originating from these other networks that are sending it to your TV and letting you interact and interface with it, but it's not originating from your TV. So in the same way, at the banks, they're still going to have the same Swift interface, the same thing that they're used to, but I think the big change that's coming is Ripple will be plugged in to the back end and actually do the bridging and the processing of the payments and settlement. That's the big change that's coming. And we're going to dive into that a little bit. Also, I just want to point out, if you think about it I've done a lot of corporate training. That's a lot of work to prepare for and train people on a new system. I've also rolled out big systems to companies like AT&T and Sprint and integrated those into their telecom environment. And it's a massive undertaking. And so I'm going to kind of talk about it in terms of that experience. And if you think about it, trying to deploy Ripple's software directly to the banks, you're talking about thousands of banks that would all need their tellers and their bank managers and so forth trained on this new system, not to mention the fact that they're in hundreds of different countries speaking hundreds of different languages. That is a logistical nightmare that would take years and years to accomplish. I think long term, that's where things are going in some shape or fashion, but there's a short-term shortcut that gives maximum benefit to the banks. Swift is bank-owned, don't forget. And I think that they see the writing on the wall. Every country out there, be it Faster Payments Task Force, this European one that we're going to talk about here in a minute, all the central banks have these initiatives for one thing: faster cross-border payments, quicker settlement times, reduced latency, reduced errors, all just real-time messaging, all of this stuff. They're all speaking the same language, and there is only one company, as Brad Garland's house himself has said, that is even in the race. They're probably somewhere in mile 2 or 3 right now of the marathon. And so far, nobody's even crossed the start line yet. Okay, they're the only ones. And they are so far ahead of everybody else out there. It's very clear to me what's happening behind the scenes. And I'm going to give you some of the indications that I'm relying on. So right here, if you remember the Bee Gees statement with November and the graph over the head and the chair, and there was the quilt behind the chair, which we thought was maybe HSBC logo and so forth, but I realized, no, I think it's Africa. Well, if you remember, it was all about diamond and the diamond pattern, and that's exactly what we have here. And this is a Swift document talking about Africa and payments into Africa. I'm not going to read any portions of this, but it's all the same stuff that we've been talking about. It's all ties in with Mojo Loop and getting more people in the banking system and reducing the friction points and so forth. It's all there. And this is what I think the Bee Gees were telling us was coming. Swift is sort of somehow working its way into Mojo Loop, which is the Bill and Melinda Gates initiative, their foundation thing that they have going on. And we already know that they're a Ripple partner. So now we have Swift connected to the African payments, connected to Mojo Loop. Hyperledger and all that, and Ripple. And they don't come out and say it. I don't think they will, because they're a back-end component, not the overarching system, as I'm going to explain next. Okay, so there's that connection. Now, they've also come out and announced just recently that Swift has passed all compliance checks required to offer customers seamless connectivity to tips from go live using SwiftNet, instant settlement, basically. And if you look down here, we are delighted to have passed the Eurosystem's compliance checks to provide connectivity to tips and look forward to offering our customers seamless and highly efficient access to both tips and RT1. Now, these are payment hubs. I'm going to explain that in a little bit. And then there are also integration partners, and I'm going to explain that. But let's drill into this. Actually, let me go right here. Somebody asked the question, is tips some sort of DLT? I don't really understand the technology, and I don't get if it uses DLT or something totally different, which competes with it. And this is a person from the, I think it's European Payments Council. So again, similar to Faster Payments Task Force, the people tasked with bringing this new technology, this, removing the friction from the current payment network and getting this global finance system to be more efficient. She says, hopefully the previous answer on a similar topic from European Central Bank can answer your question. The Eurosystem is the monetary authority of the Eurozone. Let me make that a little bigger for y'all. The collective of European Union member states that have adopted the euro as their sole official currency. The Eurosystem, and not the European Union, is the owner of tips. So again, you have this sort of council of European Union members that is not the European Union. They're separate from the government, just like the Fed is separate from the United States government, that owns this TIPS system, which is the payment hub that all the banks use to send payments around. Okay. The Eurosystem has chosen the so-called 4CB as its technical service provider of TIPS. 4CB indicates Banque d'Italia, Banque d'Espagne, Banque de France, and Deutsche Bank, or Deutsche Bundesbank. This is a German bank, I believe, collectively intended in their capacity as the national central banks responsible for building, maintaining, and running the TIPS service in accordance with the relevant contractual arrangements and with decisions of the ECB's governing council. TIPS is not running on Hyperledger. Now notice that's Hyperledger, not DLT or RippleNet. Still, it has a series of very interesting and innovative technical features. Interesting and innovative technical features. Who's the only one doing the really interesting, innovative stuff in the fintech space right now related to what these guys all around the globe care about? It's Ripple. Some elements of the technical solution envisioned for TIPS can be found in this presentation, which is on the website of the European Central Bank. That presentation's right here. We're going to take a quick look at it. So what do they care about? Project challenges: low latency, high volumes, high availability, resilience, and scalability. Who has low latency? Well, Ripple. 3-second settlement time. Once we get Cobalt, that's going to go to 1 second. High volumes, they're 1,500 TPS unless you're using payment channels, in which case that's 50,000 TPS. High availability, they're distributed, so the odds of the whole network going down are almost nil. So equal to the entire internet going down. Sure, you can lose portions of it at times because of local weather or whatever, but it's resilient and it's also very scalable. 24/7, 365 operations and unmanned. Now remember, we went through some of the Swift stuff, and they did a lot of things to automate their process so it could be unmanned, and so it could run round the clock. And they're saying that's a requirement. Time and technical dependencies with other projects, they've got some consolidations and so forth. 511 days to go live. I wonder when that is. This presentation, by the way, is about a year old, a little over a year old. So that's pretty close. Yeah, that's like November. Probably November 30th, I would bet. Okay, so Banque d'Italia performed a 2016 proof of concept activity with the two following main objectives: to validate feasibility of a technical infrastructure for instant payments, for pan-European instant payments as defined by the MIPS charter, which is basically, this is Federal Faster Payments Task Force. This is the European version of the Faster Payments Task Force, their initiative to seek out and identify who can resolve this problem that we have with the current SWIFT infrastructure. Okay, so a high-level assessment of the time and cost required for building a fully fledged instant payment solution. So basically, is there an ROI with the solution that the trial identifies? Okay, and they're focusing on the settlement engine, not the payment engine, but settlements. They want it settled, not paid. Latency of remote interactions, taking into account two main dimensions: volume of transactions and cardinality of accounts. They want a lot of accounts to be able to plug into this so that it really is a solution that's going to work. They want to keep the application complexity as low as possible. And remember, I talked about the difficulty in rolling out a new system and training all these people in different languages and so forth. And to perform you should recognize this word if you've been watching my videos, a paradigm shift towards innovative architectures and technologies. Who's the only one in the space that is offering a paradigm shift towards innovative architectures and technologies? Ding, 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 if you said Ripple, okay? So, and then also right here, high availability and resilience. I'll point out, I believe it's Cobalt, that if the network has transactions that are causing contention that it can't resolve, it simply sets them aside, completes the block, and hopes to include them in a later block. So as the network RippleNet encounters problems, it simply sort of backs things off, slows down, keeps chugging along, but it's slowing down the speed and the rate at which it's doing it until it can resolve those things and then race back forward and pick things back up. So that's high availability, and that's a very resilient process that's not in place today. Today, the system freezes, locks up, and sometimes has to be reset. Okay. So and then here, quantitative main results, they found linear behavior up to 25,000 transactions per second, which again, the payment channels is 50,000, but that's Ripple's like raw speed, right? If I'm putting something on top of RippleNet and I'm just using it to plug into to do my transactions, I may not be able to deliver the transactions at 50,000 per second. That could be their limitation, not Ripple's, but it certainly fits under the umbrella of the 50,000 payment transaction limit that Ripple's currently sitting at. And they're talking about hundreds of millions of accounts. Overall response time of a transaction below 5 seconds. Now remember, when I decoded the 589 prediction, I talked about Cobalt being an enabler for 589. Well, look at what this is telling us. The current settlement time with XRapid, as the network sits today, I think is 6 seconds or a little over 6 seconds. But once we get Cobalt, it goes to 1 second. And now that's on each end. So you've got two of those plus your time to move through the network and move through the integration provider's software, basically the interface that gets it to the endpoint at each bank and into the accounts. So that's could be telling us right there that it's RippleNet, because who else is even coming close to 5 seconds? It's none of the other digital assets, because none of them can settle anything close to that, and then still have time left over for the overhead of the processing system. So these are big clues, folks. And then they go through the architecture and so forth of how they do it and so on. And there's nothing, these two slides are, so this is the kind of stuff I used to present for telecom. There's nothing in here that screams RippleNet, but I guarantee you somewhere in here is the RippleNet plugin, okay? If you look, actually these two slides, I think it's somewhere in here. And if you look right here, they've got settlement, the settlement block, and master and slave. And what are they doing? They're ordering transactions. That's it. What do the validators do? They order transactions. That's it. Are they showing us the Ripple validators right here? Probably. Okay. And there's some more. You can go find this if you like. I'll throw it in the comments of the video if I remember to. Now, let's go. This was kind of tips. I want to tell you about this company. Temenos is how I'm going to pronounce it. They are the world's #1 banking software. They have over 3,000 banks. Now, those are not branches. Those are bank brands like HSBC, Chase, Wells Fargo, and so forth. 3,000 bank brands in over 150 countries run their software for their back office functionality to interface to Swift, to interface to RippleNet, and so forth. Now, these guys, guess what they did with Ripple? Here they are back in 2016, I believe it is, November 15th, 2016. So 2 years ago, what are they talking about?
And extremely slow, not just for the customer, but for you banks on the back end. 3 days to 2 weeks for settlement.
He's giving the Ripple talking points about cross-border payments at a conference with Deloitte to their customers, to the banks, explaining
waiting 2 weeks for a Hong Kong wire still to show up.
Cross-border payments.
So we're going to focus on what the blockchain can deliver. So what we have here is a bank at one end connecting to the T24, then the blue Zelle.
Okay, let's explain this. Right here, you got dollars on this end. You guys can't see it, but let me come back to here. So you've got dollars here. You've got euros over here. You've got Ripple as this plug in the middle of this T24 software that Temenos, the integration, the software integrator, the back-end software provider for 3,000 banks, has got Ripple as a component in the chain, not something that they go and query, but a key piece that's connecting this bank with this bank. All right. They're pretty much spelling out that this is XRapid, clear as day, XRapid. And then he actually brings up the interface right here. Now notice this doesn't say powered by Ripple. This is the interface that they're using today that a teller or a bank manager is going to bring up and fill out all these blanks to do a cross-border payment, and that is exactly what he does.
Put a CAD account. We're going to send it to our European partner. Let's just say it's Nordea. Credit account EUR.
He's shifting
I'm going to
currencies.
pick a random dollar figure of 78 euros that he needs. So just like this is what the teller sees through T24. Let's look at the deal. Everything's there. I got the rate that came up. Now the rate that comes up is what the Ripple protocol will come back with from the market makers. It's an efficient path finding algorithm. I validate the deal, and now you saw the transaction happen, complete. So this is what.
And it's done inside of, what was that, 2 seconds? So folks, pay close attention to this. This was 2 years ago. They did a trial with Bank Day, one of these banks. I forget who it was up here. So they've done the trial, and then here they are at their user conference. We used to hold these for our customers, which were Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, and so forth. And they're showing them that, you know, we've done this trial. These are the benefits. Here it is. I'm doing a live demo for you of XRapid 2 years ago. What have they been doing since? I think it's pretty clear from this that they have been integrating Ripple into their software, into their back-end software that 3,000 banks in 150 countries run. And what's the interface? Well, it's the same one. You heard him say it. It's the same one the tellers are using right now. No need for training. No need to, go through that. That is a major undertaking. But you avoid all that. You get all the benefits of using Ripple and XRapid without any changes as far as the teller is concerned. It's just, instead of coming back 2 or 3 days later, it's happening in seconds now. Happening in seconds. So now we have Swift over here integrating with the Eurosystems TIPS, which is their payment hub. And we've got indications that one of the integration providers, Temenos, is using Ripple as the key component right here in this process. And what have the BGs told us over and over? That it's all out in the open for anybody to see who is willing to dig in and take a look. And right here, it couldn't be any clearer. But let's make it a little clearer. One more thing to show you. I love the people who come on to Twitter and want to tell me how wrong I am about all this stuff. And they have probably never read the Faster Payments Task Force proposal. It's 148 pages, 146 pages. Really boring read, but they are laying out their processes, their tools, their functionality, their approach, their methodology, everything that they plan to do for the U.S. Federal Reserve. And there is no more revealing document that Ripple has published than this right here. If you haven't read this and you want to be able to anticipate kind of what's coming and what to expect, you need to go read this, especially if you're going to come on Twitter and tell me how wrong I am. So let's go down to page 26 right here. Step 0, integration and onboarding. First, FI, and FI is a financial institution for those of you that don't know. First, FIs integrate Ripple Connect into their system. FIs can license Ripple Connect from Ripple, so that's where we get this 1 to 2 banks per week, but that's small potatoes compared to what you're about to see. Or, let's see, FIs can license Ripple Connect from Ripple or work with an authorized integration partner. Who's an integration partner? Temenos. How many banks does Temenos represent? 3,150 countries. How is 589 going to happen? Right here. Right here. It won't happen without this, I guarantee you. Temenos has integrated Ripple into their back-end software using the same Swift interface that all these banks have been using for years. This is how the banks get the maximum benefit of what RippleNet has to offer without going through all the training hassles and everything else. And this is how 3,000 banks come online almost instantaneously, probably, staggered a little bit in stages for liquidity purposes and so forth to not shock the XRP price too rapidly. But this is how you get to 589 in 2 months. Okay, that should be abundantly clear if you've been paying attention through this presentation. This is how it's going to happen. This is where we're going to go. And this is what the BGs have been telling us. Of course, if they're somebody that's working with Temenos or they're part of Temenos or whatever, they're going to know the volumes because these are the guys processing all of these payments today for a huge, huge chunk of the banks, of the banking industry doing all of these cross-border payments. So of course they're going to pass those volume and transaction amounts over to Ripple so that they can stress test, so that they can determine what liquidity is needed. And as part of that, guess what? They're going to know what price to expect. That's how we came to plus 589. Okay. And I love these people that also want to come on and tell me how $589 plus is not about a dollar amount. I mean, it should, like, they're going to put those in there as red herrings or something. I find that absolutely ridiculous. That's people inserting their bias before they interpret the information. It's one thing to interpret the information. It's another thing to decide if it's valid or not. Interpret the information first, figure out what these guys are trying to tell us, and then determine, what kind of percentage. And for me, I'm probably about 70% on 589 right now. You make your own decisions. Again, not investment advice. I'm just telling you, these pieces right here are painting a very clear picture to me and to anybody that's paying attention. And I think as we come closer, things like Swift right here, I don't even know if I read this or not, but they're talking about instant settlement and all these things that they can't do today. They can't do, and Ripple's the only one that can do them. There's all of these very clear signs that they have been working and making this happen for a long time. And just to end with a little humor here, I'm not saying it was Ripple, but it was Ripple. I'm Sam I Am. We'll catch you next video.